Okay, this is Inner Chaos by Grevin Hades. Chapter 3, Unexpected Events. Everfree Forest, just outside the remains of Princess's former castle. Evening. Twilight, Rainbow Dash, Fluttershy, and Applejack ran and flew as fast as they could to their destination, which was the castle where they earned the right to be the bearers of the elements of harmony. They knew that they had to hurry because they could hear the cries of howling timberwolves that prowled in the forest. They considered themselves quite lucky that they never ran into a manticore or a hydra though, and hoped their luck continued. Twilight was quite curious to learn about this new being in Equestria that had shown extreme intelligence through its use of magic, as well as a decent moral understanding since it helped the Cutie Mark Crusaders escape death at the hands of a terrible fire. She galloped faster as the rope bridge came into view. "We're almost there, girls. Just a little further." "Good. I can't wait to get a good look at the thing. I wonder how cool it is." Rainbow Dash laughed a bit as she did a barrel roll next to Fluttershy. Are you sure it won't hurt us? I mean, what if it isn't friendly?" Fluttershy flinched as Dash's wings came close to her for a moment. Applejack shook her head. "Nah, thinking back to how things were before, I can tell it meant no harm. When I saw it, the broad shoulders, the dark cloak conquered over my sister, I slipped into the same mindset that I had when I met Sakura. If I had taken a closer look, I would have seen I was just trying to help, but I was just too darn bullheaded to realize it at the time and overreacted." Twilight frowned at the tone in Applejack's voice. "AJ, what you did was perfectly normal. Any pony in your situation would have done the same thing. I'm sure that it will fully understand." Applejack nodded, a small smile forming on her lips once more. "I sure hope you're right, Twilight. Now let's hurry up. Just one more little jog across that bridge and we'll see if you're right about it being here." Twilight nodded and lowered her head, building more speed. She couldn't wait to see this being and get to know it. Within moments, the group crossed the bridge and slowed to a halt on the other side. Applejack froze for a moment, leaning down to look at the ground before them. The two Pegasi landed next to their friends, while Applejack lightly pawed at what caught her attention. "Twa, take a look at this." Violet bent down, her eyes narrowing as she looked over what Applejack had found. "It looks like hoof prints, only there are just two of them, and they're big. Only Big Mac could leave an indentation like that." Applejack nodded in agreement. "I thought so too. It's in the ruins. You were right to head this way, Twi. Good work, Twi." She smiled at her friend who turned her head, her cheeks heating up slightly at the praise, but Twilight didn't pause for long as she noticed something else. Narrowing her eyes, she bent down and gave it a closer inspection before speaking. "Girls, from what I can tell, these prints are not from a four-legged creature. It's bipedal." Fluttershy squeaked as she ducked behind Rainbow Dash. You mean it walks on two legs?" She glanced over her shoulder back toward the direction of Ponyville. "Should we get the others?" Rainbow Dash laughed and shook her head. "Relax, Fluttershy. If this thing went to hurt any pony, it would have done so already. Besides, Pinkie Pie was watching the twins. Rarity was too busy fussing over Sweetie Belle." She paused, glancing at Applejack, who was looking down with lowered ears. Look, AJ, I didn't mean to say that you don't care." Applejack shook her head and smiled at Rainbow Dash. "I know, Dash. Apple Bloom has Big Macintosh and Granny Smith to look after her right now, so it's okay I'm here. Besides, that thing landed in Sweet Apple Acres, and as a representative of the Apple family, make certain that the farm won't be at risk. Just in case." Rainbow smiled in return and looked at Twilight for it to be okay to continue on the journey. "Are you okay with going on, Twilight? I could just zip in there, take a quick look around, and be back here in 10 seconds. Twilight chuckled at her friend. "No, we're all going, Dash." There was another howl from the timberwolves, making her tense and begin to move forward. "Besides, I'd feel more comfortable in the castle ruins. We We already know there aren't any wolves or manticores in there. With that, the quartet started on once more, heading for the main entryway of the old familiar ruins. Scene change. Every forest, castle ruins. Evening. Griffin frowned as he moved through the old castle with careful movements. Often during his travels, he found that all it would take was a single misstep on a floor switch, and the next thing he knew, he would be doing his best to dodge arrows or ceiling-mounted maces. Though, this place seemed rather calm compared to some of the other places he had visited. Plus, the lack of a majority of the ceiling helped him relax from that particular worry. He pressed in further, passing a rather large sculpture in the center of the room. It stood several heads taller than he, and looked as though it were a series of pedestals. Perhaps they didn't leave anything of value here when they left. I'm surprised. As he continued forward, moving through the main building and up towards the tower he had seen through a window, he couldn't help but think about the pony that had attacked him. She was only a head or two shorter than himself, wore a hat, and spoke quite clearly. Perhaps their species were the dominant creatures of this land. He made his way into the main chamber of the tower with slow, methodical steps. He relaxed, believing himself to be alone and safe here, at least for the moment. He took some time to take in the architecture of the structure, and was quite surprised to see how ornate the various columns were in the room. He imagined that back in its prime, this entire castle was quite a sight to behold. Stepping forward, he decided to see if he could find any more guidance through magic and began to channel it once more into his fingertips. He immediately felt a large pull at his very core that nearly pulled him to his knees. He didn't know what he felt, but he knew he couldn't just sit there and not explore a bit. He stepped further into the room, allowing his magic to fade. His breathing came slowly, now as he began to feel the familiar weight in the air once again surround him. Something had happened here, but he did not know what. Deeper and deeper into the chamber he walked, moving closer and closer to the pillars on the far side of the room, when he heard the sound of hooves on stone. His mind quickly slipped into survival mode, making him immediately take rush steps to the back of the room, sliding himself behind a pillar and spilling into the shadows. He kept his back flat against the cool stone of the pillar he stood behind. His head continued to listen to first the sound of hooves, and then the sound of voices in quiet conversation echoing off the ancient walls. He inched his way to the very edge of the column, peeking around using as much shadow to hide himself as possible. As the figures came into view, he noticed that they were the same ones from before. He recognized them all from the orchard. There were two with wings that were hovering in place, one cyan blue with a rainbow-shaded mane, and one was pale yellow with a long pink mane. There was a purple unicorn with a violet mane with a stripe running through it, and then there was the one that had attacked him before. Upon closer inspection, he noticed her coat to be orange in color, with a very long blonde-colored mane, with a large hat atop her head. He frowned, believing that they were here to confront him for earlier. He had no wish to upset the locals any further, so he decided it would be best to remain hidden, watch from the shadows, and wait for them to give up their search and be on their way. He slowed his breathing to be as silent as possible, and carefully listened to them as they spoke. Perspective change. Twilight, how do you know it came in here? For all we know, it could be still out in the forest. Applejack, you know that this place was where the elements were unleashed. It's only logical to be drawn to this place. Fluttershy shivered as she looked at the old archway at the room entrance. What if we scared it off? Rainbow Dash flew up towards the ceiling to get a perspective while Applejack turned to face her timid friend. I sure hope not, Fluttershy. If we find it, and if it's friendly, I want to apologize for my actions earlier. Save Schooloo, Sweetie Belle, and Apple Bloom. I owe it a big thank you for all that. She lowered her gaze, her ears drooping. Twilight frowned as she moved further into the room. Now where could it have gone? There isn't exactly many places to go from here. She trotted up to the pedestal that brought back very familiar memories to her. This was the same location where she and the others had confronted and defeated Nightmare Rune, the place where Princess Luna was reunited with her sister, Princess Celestia. She looked up at Dash, who was looking around the room from a higher perspective. "Do you see anything, Rainbow?" Dash sighed as she floated back down. "No, it's too dark in here. I can barely see the hoof in front of my face. We may have lost it, Twilight." Perspective change. Grevin smiled a bit as he listened to the conversation between the four ponies. They didn't seem as bad as he first assessed, and even seemed somewhat concerned. However, he didn't wish to trouble them more than he already had. All his life he felt as though he were a burden on people, and now that he was in this strange land, he knew he couldn't fully trust anyone or anything. He had to depend on himself, and only himself, to survive and find his way home. He slowly maneuvered himself away from the edge of the column, making certain not to create much noise as he moved. All it would take was a single loud noise to draw their attention to him. He faced the back wall and began to see if there was another hidden way out of the room. As he squinted through the dim light at the seemingly blank wall face, he couldn't help but notice something on a large brick in the wall a few feet from him. He glanced over his shoulder, hoping that as he moved from column to column, the four ponies wouldn't notice him. He started slowly, but as he got closer, his pace quickened. The image he barely saw before became clearer and clearer through the thick layers of dust. He again glanced over his shoulder before taking in a slow breath and gently blowing away some of the dust to reveal a rather intricate design etched into the tile. He took another breath and again blew away more dust. Waving his hand in front of his face to clear the air, he couldn't help but feel his jaw drop and his eyes widen at what he saw before him. Etched into the wall was a very large, ornate shield with a pair of feathery wings on either side of it, the very same design found on his armor that he currently wore. What the? He froze, bringing both of his hands to his mouth and cursing at himself for being so foolish. Sure enough, he heard the conversation behind him pause as the four ponies turned to face the general area where they heard the sounds. He moved back as quickly but silently as he could, pushing his back against the cool stone of the nearest column, hoping to conceal himself before it was too late. "Girls, did you hear that?" Fluttershy shivered as she ducked down, holding her hooves over his head. "I sure did, Shy. I don't think we're alone in here." Applejack began to move closer to the back of the room, followed by Twilight, whose horn was beginning to glow to provide more light. Rainbow jumped into the air and followed her friends. "Okay, come on out, or I'll kick you out of there in 10 seconds flat." Grevin mentally kicked himself while remaining silent. Hopefully they wouldn't get too much closer and he could find a way to duck out a window. For a moment he even considered trying to fight his way out, but he knew that would only make things worse. As he continued to glance over the large tile still before him, causing several questions to rise into the back of his mind. As the light from the unicorn grew closer, the etching became clearer, revealing that it was indeed the same design on his armor. Grevin knew it had to be more than just a coincidence. He felt it in his very soul. Slowly he moved closer to the tile again. He could almost feel it calling out to him, begging to be touched. Slowly he rose his hand up, moving closer and closer. Just inches away, he saw a faint glimmer of magical energy skim through the image, making him move in closer. Slowly, his gloved fingers lightly touched the shield, his mind forgetting about the potential danger now. He ran his fingertips over the image, and against his better judgment, he channeled a light amount of magic into his fingers, hoping to unlock the tile's mystery. That was a mistake. As soon as his magic touched the tile, it flashed brightly and released a large wave of pressure that threw Grevin back into the column he was just hiding behind. He grunted out a single curse as he slammed hard into the cold, unmoving stone, his head hitting with a sickening thud, causing him to see stars before slumping to the ground, out cold. This was not the only repercussion, though. The entire chamber began to shake violently. At first, dust would fall from various areas, then windows began to crack and fall, shattering the sharp pieces on the ground. Twilight and Applejack moved away quickly as the columns began to shake and rock back and forth, threatening to fall. Twa, what's happening? I don't know. Rainbow Dash was forced to begin dodging sharp pieces of rock that would fall from the ceiling above her. It was then that she turned and saw something that terrified her. Above Applejack and Twilight, the column had begun to fall toward them. If it hit them, they would be crushed and killed. She narrowed her eyes. She knew she had to act. Hang on, guys! She reared back and shot forward, tackling her two friends, pulling them with her into safety, while the column shattered into pieces where they just were. After a few moments, the shaking began to slow, then stop, giving a small sense of peace to the castle once more. Twilight, Applejack, and Rainbow Dash slowly stood up, shaking the dust from their coats. Twilight looked at the shattered remains of the column where they once stood, and then looked over at Rainbow Dash. Thanks! Any later and we could have been really hurt. Rainbow smirked at her, her feathers clean. Please, that was nothing. But you're welcome. Applejack slowly trotted forward, taking stock of the room now. A few columns had fallen, and there was a lot of debris on the floor from the ceiling. As she looked over towards the front of the room, though, her breath caught in the throat, and she visibly paled. Twa? Dash? What is it, Applejack? Twilight trotted over and followed her friend's gaze, only to step back. Oh no. Dash frowned as she moved to her friends and looked over as well. She too paled and shot forward immediately. Oh no, no, no. Before them, Fluttershy, pinned under a pile of rocks from chest down, pale, with red liquid beginning to pool around her. Her eyes were open and looking up at her friends with fear, the blue orbs rimmed with tears of pain. Her breathing was labored and shallow. Help